Oh, you are so fortunate. It is me, God's comic Brad Stein, and this is, in fact, Brad Stein Has Issues, and Do I Ever? Where comedy, Christianity, and conservatism collide in a cacophony of clarity. Tonight's special guest is somebody that I have listened to for many years. Off Breakpoint, his name, John Stonestreet, and he's involved with Chuck Colson's ministry that he started years ago that got me started on Christian worldview. And we're going to be talking about the documentary that is available right now called Truth Rising. If there's anything we need right now, it is truth, and what it means to be true, and what it means to stand for truth, and what truth is. And you know, Wyatt, you are my son, and you are also my sidekick. Isn't that true?
I mean, I'm not really at your side. I'm
Okay.
sort of like adjacent to you, but other than
But
that,
would
yeah.
you mind if I kicked you?
Well, I mean, do I have a choice?
No, not if you want to get paid. Listen,
Exactly.
here's the thing that I want you to understand, why. There was a very famous man, Pontius Pilate. I don't know if you ever heard of him, but he's the one that kind of condemned Jesus to the cross. He was a Roman, and you know how those Romans are, Wyatt. They're just ruthless. Have you ever noticed that about Romans? Like when you go live your life, you're out there, you're trying to get something to eat, you're trying to go to church, you're trying to engage the public, and you come across a Roman, especially a Roman emperor. Don't you find them off-putting?
I mean, I'd definitely be roaming around them.
Yeah, you need to. And the quicker you can do a pun, the easier it is to escape some funny or some kind of retort that makes
Listen,
people go,
puns can be funny. The fact that they weren't in this case was just pure coincidence.
you know, I got to tell you this. I think it was, what was that guy's name? Oh, I forgot his name. But he was a author in Britain, and I think it was him. I could be wrong, and I've lost his name, which makes this whole thing sound stupid. Nevertheless, he was famous. But he said a bad pun is the worst form of comedy, and not a pun, because there are some really brilliant puns out there. Like, for example, I have two wives, and it's big of me to say so. So there are some clever puns and some good ones, but then bad puns are the domain of the unfunny and of those who try too hard for people to consider them humorous. Why? I don't think you're a purveyor of bad puns, but let's be very honest. You're good at it. You certainly can purvey a bad pun here and then, and you've also had some good ones. Anyways, that's neither here nor there. Truth, Pontius Pilate was told by Jesus, you know, the truth will set you free. And Pontius said, what is truth, Wyatt? Somebody came up to you, let's just say, and they said, hey, Wyatt, I heard you're one of them Christian guys. What is truth? What would you say?
Well, I mean, the first definition doesn't really help us. It's just the quality or state of being true, which,
Yeah.
thank you, dictionary, for that insight that no other human could have possibly come up with.
Yeah.
I have
No,
to-
but I mean, you personally, like
Yeah.
when you think of truth,
Yeah.
what do you think of?
When I think of truth,
Yeah.
I think of truth social.
Okay.
Mostly because it's the only thing I know of that has more truth in it. It's like a
Really?
product, yeah.
Is that truth?
No, that's actually more of an opinion. But,
Okay.
you know, don't tell anyone that.
Well, listen, the reason I say that is because, you know, the idea of truth is something that I have used for so many years as a comic, in that I said, you know, truth is what we're shooting for. You know, Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and life. So he's literally saying, I am truth. Now, he's a human who was God incarnate, the monotheistic God,
Yeah.
and the God that became human. So he's one of a kind. There's really nobody else like Jesus, Wyatt. And no, you're not quite like Jesus. You're trying, I think.
Look, if my puns were just a little bit better, I think I'd get there.
If your puns were better, you'd be more like Jesus. Is that
I'd say so.
so? Jesus was good at puns.
I mean, is there any evidence he wasn't?
I don't know that there is. Okay.
I mean, you know.
I get it. So we've reduced Jesus Christ, the Messiah, who died for our sins, to a pun master.
No, not a pun master. the pun master. Think about it. Who invented puns?
All right,
Think
all
about
right.
it.
All right. Well, clearly, yes, you're right. If whatever he did, he would do at the
Absolutely,
highest
yeah.
levels of punishness.
Honestly, he might even pull a Shakespeare and just invent new words on the spot just to make it better.
Well, don't you think that should be available to all of us to make up new words? I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah. What is Shakespeare
every
going to be the
word
only one?
started out as didn't used to be one.
Yeah.
Okay, so quit complaining all the
I'm not
time.
complaining. I'm asking why Shakespeare's the only one we've allowed that privilege.
I don't. That's not true.
Name one other person who was allowed to just come up with whatever word he wanted. And
John Steinmeier over in Ohio.
really? What did he convince?
Chunchent.
Chugent. Oh, yes,
Yeah.
of course. The ever popular and present Chugent.
Chunchent, a word
my-
that means a use of making up a word when you don't have the right
Can you, use
one.
it, can you use it in a sentence?
Yes. I wanted just to say my feelings towards that particular problem, but I was chunchent in having no access to it. So I created a new word. So it's
Yes,
a word that
But what I was
reminds
getting at is that Shakespeare didn't just invent new words out of nowhere. He invented new words that people then immediately went, yes, that's a word. That's always been a word, and it will always be one.
Well, good for him. And yes, every word that you've used so far, somebody invented somewhere, sometime,
Yeah,
somehow.
but it took time for those words to be
How
adopted.
do you know? You weren't there.
Neither were you. So how do you know that wouldn't happen?
I know, but I'm the host, so I get to make it up, and it's always my ideas that are better. And that's part of the fun of being the host.
Really?
Sidekick gets to be just sort of the
So every idea that you've had
antagonist.
is the best,
between you and me.
including your idea to give me a mic and the ability to unmute myself.
That was a mistake.
Yeah, it's pretty sure that one was not one of your better ideas.
Well, let me tell you one thing that was a good idea. Over the weekend, I don't know if I mentioned this to you, and the fact is, if we play back the tape, clearly I haven't. So I didn't even need to preface it. But over the weekend, I was in two places, not simultaneously. That would make me omnipresent, which would make me like God. And as we know, God and God alone can be in two places at the same time, as well as doing a pun both times. But I was in Orlando, well, Oviedo, actually, at a fundraiser, performed a fundraiser for a wonderful Christian organization that helps homeless people find jobs and get jobs. And so I helped raise money for them. And then I went to Minneapolis, flew into Minneapolis, drove all the way down to Fairmont, Indiana to be at a fundraiser for Martin Luther School. And guess who put that on, Wyatt?
I believe it was Nick Green. Or
Who?
Nick, Nick something?
Nick,
Nick Cress?
yeah,
Green?
Nick Green.
Nicholas Cage?
It was Saint Nick. It was Saint Nick.
I'm sorry, I'm bad at names.
Now, you know how you and I have been, seen and heard from Nick for so many years now.
Yeah, yeah.
He's been such a supporter of Brad San has issues.
Yeah.
We don't know yet why. A lot of us think it has something to do with a tumor.
I think he lost a bet.
Could have been, but nevertheless, he continues to help us, and he's just a really nice guy, and he's a committed Christ follower. And he put together this fundraiser for Martin Luther School. It's a Christian school to help them raise money and help them bring up the next generation of believers there in Minnesota. And so that was a lot of fun. And it was exciting to see where he's from. I mean, he's come and visited our studio. He came to one of the show tapings of Laugh While It's Legal. And now I've been to his spot. So that's rare. Karen Boyd's come to shows, but I've never gone to her area. Nick has come to show, but now I've gone to his. So him and I have reciprocated in that regard. And I think my debt to him is over. I think if he wants to continue to give and give and give, I appreciate that, but I think I've done enough at this point. Wyatt? Thoughts?
Thoughts?
You think I've done enough for Nick now, or do I have to continue?
I don't know. I
to be
mean,
good
there's
to
still
him?
some more I think we can get out of this relationship, you know?
Well, that's what we're
This is
shooting for.
something. Maybe a pun? I don't know.
Listen, I heard something from Nick. He's told me that Ashley Haas, I don't know if you remember her, but she was a plumber that used to participate in our shows. But she got a new job, and so she can't be here on Monday nights. So poor old
That's
Ashley went
unfortunate, but At
sideways.
least that explains where she went. I was worried.
Is it or is it not true that you once bowled with Ashley Haas?
That's a bold statement if ever I heard one. But
Well,
yes,
then
you are true. You are correct.
now who won?
I don't know. You tell me. Who won? The man who was middling at best on his high school bowling team? I think so.
So she won. Okay, so she didn't win. You won.
Way to steal my thunder, man. That's like my one sporting achievement I have.
Yeah, but you're not that great.
I middling at best. We've been over this.
If you're not at least hitting in the 200s, you're not a good bowler.
My high score was 210.
Okay.
So I am definitely somewhat good.
And it's the only time you ever broke 200.
Twice.
Oh, good for you. All right. Well, anyways, that was actually, and I was thinking about that because, we had talked about a few weeks ago about trying to get you a date before you turn 30. And then I was starting to think, wait a minute, you went bowling with Ashley. Is that a date? And then I guess it isn't. It's not like you said, hey, you want to go on a date? So I don't even know what a date is anymore. Like for your age group, what does it mean to go on a date? Like, do you guys don't even do it? See, when I was growing up, we would literally have to go to the girl or call her or see her at school or wherever and say hi and get to know her. And would you like to go out on a date? You'd like kind of have to say date so they knew what it was, as opposed to you want to get something to eat where it's just friends hanging out. But the word date had to be inserted or it wasn't considered a date. So in your age group, and you've never had a date that we're aware of, so maybe you aren't the best representative of this this conclusion, but let's pretend that you do understand your age group. Do you guys have to say you want to go on a date? Do you say let's hang out? What does it mean to officially have been on a date in your age at 29?
I'm not really quite sure. I mean, at the end of the day,
I don't know why I ever bring this
I
up.
don't. But why do you?
I just-
every single time you expect a different response.
I know.
Every time, and where does it leave us? Here again?
Yeah.
Right back here?
And it's always it's just a sad testimony to where you sit there sulking again, contemplating incel once more.
It's like of every single word you possibly could have used at that moment.
Yeah.
You had to pick that one.
Well, it was just because I said it one time because I didn't know what it meant, and you took deep umbrage.
Any single human being on the planet would at least do a double take if you called them that.
Okay. Well, I didn't call you that. I'm just.
No.
It was
No,
a joke
no,
that we
you
made before when I was trying
wasn't it
to.
your hook? I
Well-
thought you didn't know what it meant. It was just like legitimately were honestly asking.
I did because I thought it meant somebody that chooses not to date. That's literally what I
so,
thought.
so you were saying, aren't you an incel, not out of malice, just because you legitimately didn't think it meant what it does.
Yeah.
So you did call me that.
Yeah.
You just didn't think it was as bad.
Right.
So
So
you-
it is a pejorative.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. Well, I'm sorry, son. I
The
did not. mean to
cyber
do-
police will be at your doorstep any day now.
Well, I don't want to get your thoughts about something if you don't mind.
Oh, why stop now?
I was at the show for Ned Kress's Martin Luther show, and I'm experimenting with some new material because as you know, you were there. You helped ruin my taping by not moving up my list of jokes.
You ruined your own taping by not telling me what they listened for when you wanted me to change.
Anyways, we pulled it off, and the show's in the can. Everybody's happy with it. Nevertheless, it was a struggle because you were not good at moving up the scroll. But nevertheless, I'm not here to describe that problem you have with scrolling. What I did want to say was this: it's material. It's an hour's worth of material, and I need a new hour because an hour is about what is expected for a concert. So I now have to create brand new material. Now, I don't know if you know this, and you might because you've been around your dad a little bit. But if you didn't know, to come up with an hour's worth of brand new comedy that works and is consistent, it can take a year or two, depending on how many shows you do. If I did 300 shows a year, I promise you I'd have an hour of good material. If I could get 300 shows in a row, I would have an hour because it takes that much time to work it out because you have to work it out in front of the crowd. But I'm working on some new material as we speak. Now, one of the good things that I did was I took one of the jokes from Laugh While It's Legal that we taped, and I clipped it out. I pulled it out of the final editing because It was a little long, and so we needed to bring it down to an hour, a little less than an hour. So in order to do that, we had to edit some stuff, and so we took out some of the opening stuff I did that was playing around a little bit with this idea of unequitable uh, uh, applaud applaud for me, and I was playing around with a joke there, and it's like, we don't need that, and so I cut that down. But I took a full joke out just to because I had to find someplace, and I removed it. Now I like that because every show I've ever done, and I've got 7 albums. The beautiful thing about it is, especially the first albums, is you got a lot of material that you've done over the years, and you finally record one, and that's the original, and that was Put a Helmet On. The first well-known one I did do. What's the first one I did? Oh, Rebel Without a Curse in '99, and that's got a composite of a lot of material that ended up spread over 5 or 6 albums. But the one that I'm most known for is Put a Helmet On, and that was my first, done in 2003. Well, what happens is then when you finish that, you get to look at all this other material you didn't record, or maybe got edited out of Helmet. I don't even remember if anything got edited out of it at this point. And I'm happy because it's like, oh, good, I can immediately move this stuff to the next album. Meanwhile, I'm also trying to come up with some new stuff along the way. So I got the stuff that works, the solid stuff that gets the laugh, gets them on my side, and then I'm playing with the new stuff until it works, until you have a full out. And then that is done. Then that's clipped out. Whatever's left over that works, but you didn't use it, that gets to go to the next album. So it's wonderful. You get to keep passing it off. Well, you have some diminishing returns because over the years, you start recording everything. And again, it takes a long time to get new material, and you have less and less and less and less material that gets to be transferred over. So the one joke that was working, it worked, it was a good one, but it still could be refined a little bit, to be honest. Got pulled from that, and that will be on my next album. So at least I know I've got a funny joke that works. It's already been proven. That will go into my next album that I can count on if God allows me to live long enough to make album 8. So that's one. But then I got some new material I'm working on as well. But I said something, and I haven't told you this, or maybe I did, but I wanted to get your thoughts on it. And I wanted to get you guys who are watching thoughts on this joke and tell me what you think about it when I tell you what I'm about to say. So I told you guys that if you were um, curious about how comedy works and how you have to build this stuff up, I have a joke. And White, I want to get your thoughts on this because there's a lot to say about this joke that is beyond the joke. Now, for those of us who are familiar with my material, maybe you stumbled on the show, you're watching for the first time, you're on X, we get a lot of people watching it live. On YouTube, we get a handful of people watching it live, and then we get a lot of the clips that are watched over time. And a lot of people, the vast majority of the people that watch this podcast or go to Life Audio, where you can listen to it on the Salem network, which is audio only, but it's a more shortened version. To get the full thing, you got to go to the YouTube channel. Anyways, for those who watch the full video, I try to talk about comedy as well as social issues, issues that have to do with my faith and so forth. That's what I'm trying to make this kind of a hybrid of comedy and Christianity and conservatism, and all these things, because I want you to be able to not only have some fun watching or listening, but I hope I'm inspiring you and I hope I make you think. And especially if you are a non-believer in Jesus, that you consider him because he is the unique, one of a kind, game changer human that has ever existed on earth. The only one that's ever come up with the proof that he would be prophetically predicted, show up, do the things he was told, die, come back from life. People saw it and said, you're not going to believe this God was here. So that makes him one of a kind. You don't have to believe any of those ideas. You don't have to believe any of them are true. They're all made up by guys that decided the best thing we can do for our life right now is pretend this guy came back from the dead, preach it. They're all going to kill us. And that's what we get. So yeah, that doesn't make sense, but let's just pretend that's the way you want to go. On the other hand, you might believe in him and find a world of meaning that you simply don't have as of right now. And by the way, a lot of people are abandoning this new atheism that had some traction a few years ago and coming back to church because atheism offers you nothing. The more and more and more I listen to atheism, the more I realize how absurd it is, literally absurd. It never can function without using and presuming that their thoughts and their ideas and reaching a conclusion has a value, and yet atheism has no intrinsic value. So none of it works. They always have to presume there's meaning in life to even come to the conclusion life has no meaning. So it cancels itself out. I'm getting more and more befuddled and almost less interested in atheism because I realize it's such a simple, um, um, just lazy way to see the world. But it's very narcissistic. It allows you to be God. So I could understand the draw. If you're an atheist, I get to be God. I get to make the rules. And best of all, I can do anything I want. And there's nothing to tell me that it's immoral. So who wouldn't want that? That's original sin, right? I'm God. But I will say this, that to be a comic has two purposes. One of those purposes, probably the first purpose, maybe the purpose that most people consider what makes comedy work, is it's funny. You say things that make you laugh. Now, I don't even like the term make you laugh. Like people say, you're going to make me laugh. It's like, I don't want to. I hope I don't have to make you laugh. I hope you want to laugh. And that way you can join in. If I have to make you laugh, if you're going to come in here going, I dare you, I don't know what fun that is. I think you should come up with an open mind in the hopes that laughter will ensue. But I can't guarantee it, especially if you're not a very laughable person. And they exist. I've had plenty of them in my show over the years. But first thing a comic should do is make you laugh or bring laughter to you, because that's the unique thing he does that other people don't necessarily do. That's our unique gift, right? But for me, the comedy was always to go beyond just making you laugh, but in fact, to make you think. I have said this before, but it bears repeating, especially if there's new people watching or listening. If you were to categorize comedy, there's sort of the frivolous, fun comedy. I'm thinking of the Brian Regans. Now the Nate Bargatze's the number one comic in the country right now. Even the Seinfelds, guys that don't really curse, guys that aren't really provocative. They're not political. They don't have an agenda. They just want to find funny things about life. That's a wonderful way to do comedy. It's just fun and everybody gets to enjoy it and nobody has an agenda and every political persuasion can watch together and laugh together, and nobody feels slighted. Nobody feels that he took a side, and there's nothing wrong with that. Matter of fact, it's probably the smartest, wisest way to do comedy if you're skilled at comedy and you want to make a lot of money. That's the best choice you can make. I couldn't do it. I was landed in the world of Richard Pryor's and Dave Chappelle's and Chris Rock's and George Carlin's, is that I believe that God gave me the ability to do comedy to talk about his story, that God is real, that he existed, that he revealed himself, that he dimensionalized himself, that the world is needed of God and return to God. And America, where I'm from, needs a third great awakening. And the people from the president to the vice president to the Congress to the judges to the attorneys to the congressmen to the mayors and governors need to speak Christ from their positions of influence. Now, people say, well, that's a separation of church and state, is it not? Well, it's not, because there was no separation of church and state in the Constitution. It's the exact opposite. And for those who don't know this, and you should by now, if you watch this show, the whole idea of separation of church and state was taken from a letter to the Danbury Baptists from Thomas Jefferson, the Baptists were concerned that the state or the federal government would dictate a denomination as the country's religion. They didn't want to have their denomination discarded, and they were concerned. And he said, "Don't worry, there's a separation of church and state. So the state is never going to forbid you to believe, think, and act and behave the way you choose. We have no right to infiltrate your domain, which is the domain of the transcendent, of the spirit. We are the government, the political sphere. So our job is to maintain the peace, to try to keep cohesion between the states, to try to give us ability to raise wealth. And we need to defend ourselves against armies and whatsoever, and maybe even have an infrastructure like some highways and things along that way. We need to be able to have sort of a functioning republic where all the different states, which are their own governments, can come together and work together in one. So that was really the purpose of the federal government. It was supposed to be very limited. He feared the by the way, all of them feared the Supreme Court the most because they realized that these guys were elected, were not elected, but were put into power and could decide to just say that the Constitution says this or says that, and they will. And if they aren't originalists, and the whole point of uh, the Supreme Court was to interpret the Constitution as it was originally intended by those who wrote it. We have plenty of letters. We have plenty of times when, while they were still alive, that they could comment about what they meant by the First Amendment, what they meant by federalism, what they meant by how much they want the federal government to have power and who shouldn't. And they knew that humans were intrinsically evil. This is a Christian idea. They believed in that. Thus, they split the government into three parts: the executive, the legislative, and the judiciary, so that they could check and balance each other. So that one guy, because they knew one guy given power was going to take it, going to run with it. And they wanted to see if they could break it up. And they did the best they could. And we did fairly well up to this point. But clearly, we no longer are a republic, and that the people don't seem to rule anymore. And those who get into power in politics, they do it for one reason: to have power, to make money, and to have status. They do not care about this nation. That is clear. They are fully and utterly corrupt. I've lost all interest in the political realm. I consider these people to have lost their way in what they were supposed to do, which is represent us as the people. That's what our vote for them means as a republic, is that you represent my vote. You don't get to go in there and make up your own way. But neither should the judges. And that's why we sit here pondering, what is the Supreme Court going to say about this? Oh, good. We have 5 conservative judges, so we're going to get our way. Oh, yeah, well, wait till we get a bunch of liberal judges. Then we'll get our way. Both of those concepts are wrong. There shouldn't be a conservative or a liberal judge. There should be a constitutionalist judge who does nothing but observe what did they mean when they started this country. That's all that matters. Now, I, as a comic, want to make commentary about my country. I want to make commentary about the culture. I want to make commentary about crazy things that I think are unconstitutional or are silly or weird or sinful or bad or good. I think that's where comedy can be funny and effective. Again, nothing wrong with the guys that just make you laugh. That makes you just get away from politics, get away from wars, get away from evil, get away from darkness for 1 second. Just let us laugh and enjoy ourselves together in unity. Nothing wrong with that. Unfortunately, I was called to be a voice for God through my comedy. So when I go into churches, which is my primary means of communication and my ministry and my income is to churches, it is to try to drive people to discipleship, to Christ followers, to move to the more disciplined stage, the more mature stage of truly understanding their faith, how to argue it in the marketplace, how to defend it, how to stand for it, how to be willing to fight for it as God would expect us to, through the court system, through civil disobedience. If anything that the government comes up with breaches God's command, where our job is to never, ever allow man's governmental system to breach God, because he's the ultimate government, right? So that's what I do as a comic. It's very unique, very unusual. And there was something that I said, White, and this is where I wanted to kind of get your thoughts on this, because this is where I think comedy is interesting and dangerous, but I hope helpful, hopefully provocative, to in a positive way, in a way to force people uncomfortably to have to come to grips with things. So I said to the people this, I said, hey guys, I am a Christian. I am a conservative comic. So when I finish tonight, I hope a couple things. One, I hope that you've laughed. I hope I've caused you to be inspired and to think. And I hope to do all that before I'm assassinated. Now, that is a harsh statement. That is a provocative statement. Why? When I say that as a joke, what do you think of?
Mm,
Do you think it's funny? Do you think it's provocative? Do you think it has some poignancy? What do you think I'm referencing?
I mean, we all know what you're referencing.
Okay.
It just seems like it's more of a statement than a joke.
Okay.
Like you're not necessarily trying to find the humor in it. You're taking it deadpan seriously.
Well, did you have to say dead?
Well, I mean, yeah, it's supposed to be a joke, isn't it?
Oh, okay.
At least it wasn't a pun.
No, finally. But listen, so this is where comedy can get dicey because people either take it literally or they are uncomfortable because it forces them to feel something that they don't want to feel. And let's face it, who wants to feel the fact that we now live in a country where leftism and progressivism are now giving themselves permission to kill us? Now, for a long time in America, they've said you're a Nazi, you're a fascist, you're a bigot, you're hateful, you're trying to eliminate my ability to exist in society. So you are an existential threat to me. And if you thought somebody was threatening your life, you have permission to defend yourself. Even God gives us that. So, what the left has done is it has called us things and then said that you are threatening my life. Even words, they now say, are violence. And if I'm being violated, I can defend myself, and that is law. But they've taken it to the extremes. You say they called us a Nazi, but we're not, and they haven't defined it. They called us a fascist, but we're not, but they said we are. So they decide to make the rules, define it as to be in cohesion to what they've already said without having to prove it. And then that justifies their ability to kill us. Now, we know that's true because we saw people celebrating this man's murder. So we now know people in our world, in our country, who will celebrate my murder if it happens to me or to anybody else who's a Christian conservative. And so, it is what it is. It's not, there's nothing nuanced about it. It's not something I want to happen, but I am a Christ follower, and I'm not. And if I have to be killed because I believe in Jesus, then so be it. That's what it means to be fully committed to it. But where I think there is a comedic element to this, Wyatt, is the different ways that comedy works. And you're right. It's not like it's just a funny, ha ha, that was hysterical. It's more of an uncomfortableness, and uncomfortableness can make us laugh, right? When somebody makes a statement that could sound racist or could sound insensitive or insulting, the uncomfortableness, or words, a lot of times where people were using curse words and swear words and pejoratives and whatever to make people uncomfortable, and then they laugh because it's kind of like they're trying to grapple with it. So to me, it was not making light of this horrifying thing that has happened in our country, but kind of this sort of um, acceptance that if it costs that to speak truth, then that's where we're at because it's actually happened. But it also, I think, sheds light on leftism. It says to us, this is what's at stake now. They're the violent ones. They have done it since Antifa. They're the ones that burn down buildings when they didn't get a verdict they liked. They're the ones that have disinvited people to even have the ability to disagree with them. So the violence is on the left. That's not even up for debate. They won't agree with that. They won't see that. That's the beauty of their point of view. They censor their ability to see what is actually true, to give themselves permission to do despicable things. So to me, you're right. It's not like a big, ha ha, that's hysterical. It's kind of a poignant reality that makes us kind of laugh and uncomfortable. Like, yeah, can you believe we've reached this place in America? And now it's on full display what it costs to believe as a Christian and a conservative. And I'm a comic. Theoretically, over time, we were the ones that could get away with these things and say these things because we wanted a place to where people could shed light on things that were hard and difficult to grapple with, so that we could overcome it and maybe at least talk about it in a way that is safe, but doesn't flinch from the reality of where we're at. And that to me is what it was. Will I keep the joke? I don't know. I'm going to keep experimenting with it. To me, in some ways, Wyatt, it's a tribute to Charlie Kirk, or to say to him, it's all right, brothers, that we're going to keep speaking truth no matter what, because I'm right behind you, buddy. And he was a young man, 31. I'm much older than him. So I could die of old age or cancer or whatever quicker just because of my age. And so I want him and whoever's listening, obviously he's moved on to glory. But for those of us still here, there are those of us who are never going to silence ourselves. As long as the truth is being spoken, that's all that matters. The truth is sacrosanct. It can't be changed, it can't be manipulated, and it cannot be censored. And most importantly, if you're a Christ follower, it must be uttered by you, not by me, just the comic, Maybe I give you some inspiration to do that, but you have to do it on the assembly line where you work, at the mechanics, shop where you work, at the HVAC where Nick works, at the school where you work, at your business, at your job, at your neighbors. Your job is to say, here's what is true, here's what is I believe, here's what I'm going to stand for, and here's what I'm going to give to you. This offer to know the Christian um, Messiah, uh, Jesus, so that you can have salvation. You can go to eternity with him, not because you earned it and not because we're better than anybody else. As a matter of fact, every time you see a Christian screw up and do some hypocritical thing, I don't say we're hypocrites. I say we're consistent. The Bible itself that we hold as the revelation of reality literally says there's none righteous, no, not one. The only difference for the Christian is we admit it. I don't deserve any of this, but God gave me this freedom, so I'm going to soberly try to allow him to fix and change and work my spirit, my character, to catch up to the salvation he gave when he redeemed my soul. That's what the whole thing is about. Well, we have a very special guest on today. It's a shorter interview than normal, but it's all he had time for, though he said he'd come back. His name is John Stonestreet. Now, in the 90s, I started coming across these emails called Breakpoint, and it was by Chuck Colson, who started Prison Fellowship, and he went to prison. He was part of the gang that got sent to prison in the Nixon Watergate scandal. He became a Christian in prison, I believe, or right before he went to prison, and he began to minister to prisoners throughout the country and around the world, actually, since then. But he really was he was a lawyer, he was a brilliant guy, and so he really said, Christian worldview, how do we inculcate the way that Christ followers see the world into the marketplace, because the marketplace was given to us by God. He created the hierarchy. Family was the first government, but after that we have the church, and then we have the state, and the church actually, or those who represent God, do always take precedent over the state. The state government is given that means to organize society by God. He gave us that hierarchy, but they must look to God as their guidance, and that's what the founders did. They said that our Creator gave us these rights. They said that our Creator is the one that we have to bow to. The Creator gets to trump every other idea by man's, and the Creator. The reason they said that is because if it's man's law, then it can be changed by whoever becomes in power, whoever decides that the time in history has changed. Now we're going to do it like this. And if God said it straight, it can't be changed. It's immutable. So that's why it was so important that they said our Creator gave us this. So that is what I am trying to explore and do. And so I brought so much of my understanding in the beginning of launching my Christian worldview study and education came from Chuck Colson and from Breakpoint, and it moved me into all that. Eric Metaxas, I've had on the show, a good friend of mine. He used to write for them. He knew Chuck. So these are kind of what I'm about, trying to continue to defend the Christian worldview through comedy and through this. So if you are a church, please bring me in. Go to info@bradstein.com and just write me a note. I will personally respond and show you how you can bring me in to bring humor, but also inspirational hope to bring your people to move into discipleship. So this is this brand new documentary called Truth Rising. And it really is talking about 5 different people, different Christians who have different experiences. Ali Hersey, who was a Muslim, then became an atheist, and then became a Christian, and what her life came and changed, and what she saw. Jack, oh boy, I just blanked on his last name, but the cake baker in Colorado, and what it cost him to stand for his faith. And there's some other folks too that are in this documentary. It's free on YouTube, and you can watch it, and you should. We'll probably put a link up if we can find it, so you'll know where to go. But he's going to talk about why they made this documentary, what it means as a church, as Christ followers from this day forward. It shouldn't just be because of the Charlie Kirk assassination, but that certainly should be an impetus to see how important and crucial it is that you stand for our faith and you fight for it, because hell is here and it wants to destroy our freedom. So I want you guys to listen to this conversation, see if it helped you grow. Go watch Truth Rising, folks. You're going to want to be inspired by it and let this become maybe you're the next story that we can all see about what it means to be a believer and what you're willing to sacrifice, if necessary, for the sake of the gospel. So, folks, please enjoy this fairly abbreviated 30-minute interview, but worth every drop with God's comic Brad Stein on Brad Stein Has Issues and John Stonestreet. How do you do?
Hey, Brad, thanks so much for having me on. I cut my teeth on Chuck Colson too, so we
Right.
absolutely have that in common.
Well, you know what? I ran into him once at the Charlotte airport accidentally. He was sitting at a Starbucks, and I just said, "Hey, brother, I wanted to let you know how helpful your breakpoint has been, and just the idea of Christian worldview. Frankly, I don't know if that was anything that I understood Christian my whole life, but the idea of the depth of what Christianity brings to culture and what it's for, and how a Christian is expected to live their life by doing some deep study and understanding about what it means to be a believer and how it affects reality and culture and everything that you have access to, is so lost in the American church as to be irrelevant. So if we don't recover that now, we're doomed for sure. And I think that's part of what Truth Rising really was trying to describe was, well, gee, I'm going to have to preface this. It's September 23rd, 2025. I watermarked that because in case people watch this years from now, it was only a week or so ago that Charlie Kirk was martyred. And so I think we have to preface a lot of things we're saying in the next few weeks with in the wake of the death of
Yeah.
Charlie Kirk. I think I'm going to ask an old question, but it might be a perfect launching spot for your documentary, Truth Rising. John Stonestreet, follower of Jesus Christ, and I'm guessing fairly conservative in your values. What is truth?
Well, truth is that which corresponds to reality, and reality was created by God. And a lot of people see their Christian faith as being this personal, private thing. It is personal because God has revealed himself personally to us, but it's not private, right? The idea of whether God exists or not is a public truth. And,
Yeah,
C.S. Lewis was asked, what's the most profound philosophical statement of all time? And he said, in the beginning, God, because if that's true, then everything that follows is different.
right,
And if
right.
that's false, everything that follows is different. And a lot of us have treated truth as if it's this personal, private thing. We've treated Jesus that way, as if he's our personal savior. And he is, but he's also Lord of heaven and earth.
Yeah,
And we have in the Western world reached this critical point where abandoning truth, the very notion of truth, has led us to what in the film, another great, I call him Gandalf of our moment, Os Guinness, calls a civilizational moment. In other words, the Western world sits on the precipice. Will we reattach ourselves to what is true about God, what is true about the human person, or will we go into the dustbin, the museums, where we find all the other civilizations in the past?
yeah.
And what does that mean for Christians to be called to this particular moment? Because that's the other part of worldview. It's not just how to think, it's how to live. Francis Schaeffer started talking, asking that question, how then shall we live? Chuck Colson then followed with his book, How Now Shall We Live? Brad, we're going to name it this film, something along those lines, but we're out of adverbs. So we had to go with Truth Rising. And the idea here is, listen, we have to reattach ourselves to what is true. And we have to become bold, courageous truth tellers at such a critical moment like this one, because God's called us to this moment.
Well, amen. And another thing that is true is what is the purpose of Christianity? We talk about, and we always do, we wring our hands. Gee, are we going to walk away from the Judeo-Christian ethic that created the West and this and that? And that's certainly historically true that that's what happened. It's what made freedom and
Right.
human rights and even capitalism, the ability for all people to have access to food and shelter and things along that lines. Of course, it was supposed to come through the church. It wasn't a government right. It was a right. The government's there to protect us and defend us and keep peace. But the church are supposed to be the ones that help the poor and the weak and so forth, and kind of get the government out of that, because the moment they get their hands into anything that has to do with community, they begin to take control over it and give themselves authority over God. And so thus we lose the balance. But you know what? I'm a comic. I've been a comic for over 30 something years. But I was a Christian, so I was always clean. You know, I didn't do sexual jokes or whatever. And when God started calling me into the church, I didn't even know why I was doing that. It's like, why
Mm.
you want me to do clean comedy to the church? They already bought it. Aren't I more valuable out here in the world doing clean comedy because they didn't know you could be funny and be clean? I had an entire New Yorker article, 8 pages in 2004 about me, and they called me God's comic because they didn't think you could be a Christian and conservative and be clean. Matter of fact, I think you guys did an article at Breakpoint. I think Eric Metaxas put it out years ago because he's an old friend about that
Yeah.
idea. But the reason I kind of preface my ministry, what God turned into a ministry, was the fact that that there would be once in a while a handful of churches that's changing, thank God, but that would say, you know, we like you a lot, you're funny, you're great, blah blah, but we don't want to get political. And I'm like, well, first off, I think you need to define your terms because if by political you mean I'm going to get on stage and start telling you who to vote for or which party is more moral, trust me, you won't have to sweat that because they're all corrupt, in my opinion. We have lost any sense of virtue in DC. We've been abandoned. I can't say there's not somebody out there that's a God believer and trying to do the right ethical, virtuous thing. And maybe you know some of them. But honestly, John, I don't trust any of these folks. I do trust Christ. So I'm curious as to how you think, and I'm sure Truth Rising might have some way of exploring this, as to why is the church not so deeply involved in the culture? That's the purpose, right? To redeem the culture, to fix it, to expose it, to show where it's going sideways, bring it back to Christ if you believe he is the only answer. So explain to me maybe whether your documentary grapples with that, or if not, just tell the people watching and listening why politics isn't anti-Christian. It is necessary if we are trying to be of any kind of salt and light in culture.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think the answer to the question is that many Christians have a very personalized, privatized view of faith, and the faith is much bigger than that. I mean, we know that from the history of theology, we know that from the history of the church, we know that from the Bonhoeffers and the Wilberforces and the others, and the Charlie Kirks, right, who have exemplified for us what it means to live out all the implications and ramifications of Christian truth. You know, one of the features of the modern world, and we do talk about this throughout the Truth Rising project, both the documentary and the follow-up series, is that we live in a politically charged moment where everything is political, and because everything is political, Christians have been told don't be political, so therefore they don't touch anything that's not specifically spiritual. And you know, that says a lot about our moment. That's a way that the American culture has dramatically shifted. Alexis de Tocqueville talked about how America had so many aspects to public life that weren't the federal government. You had local governments, you had Boy Scouts, you had, you know, local businesses, and especially churches and families. But as that middle ground has, or that middle of America has kind of shrunk, the politics has taken more and more and more and more. So you add all this together, here's what you got. You have a culture in which politics continues to grab more and more and more and more life, including the fundamental moral issues. When does life begin? What does it mean to be human? What about sexuality and so on? And so all these things now are perceived as being political issues when they're fundamentally moral issues with political ramifications. So we
Right.
can't engage the moral issues without being politically engaged.
Right.
Now, we would be wrong to put all of our hope in the government. Just like you said, that would be a fool's errand, right? It's
Yeah.
the Christian who are called to be salt and light. You know, you talk about remembering Chuck Colson, his raspy voice. One of the lines that I think has been most powerful and really inspired so much of what we were trying to accomplish in Truth Rising is that what the world needs now most is for the church to be the church. When the church is the church is going to speak to moral issues. When the church is the church, it's going to confront lies, and it's going to be a redeeming and restorative force for the victims of those lies.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about the Truth Rising film. I mean, this is a journey, Brad, from civilization to calling. It's from what moment are we in right now and how serious is it, to really how now shall we live, and what kind of difference can we make? So the story of the film culminates with 5 Christians who have been incredible examples of the kind of Christians we want to be, because either they've have repented and found Christ, or they took a courageous stand for truth. These are examples of, if you embrace the call to this moment, what that means is you're going to courageously tell the truth and leave the results up to God. And I'm talking here about Jack Phillips, the baker, right? Who was minding his own business until he was basically asked to say something he didn't believe. Yeah. And he could have gone along with it and we would have never known his name. Instead, he took a stand for how God created marriage. 13 years later, he was still being harassed by the state of Colorado. And here, God has him in such a remarkable way. Chloe, of course, was a victim of one of the great lies of our age, that people are born in the wrong bodies. She had a double mastectomy at age 16. Now she is a courageous truth teller, the truth about herself and the truth about the God who made her. Katie Faust, a pastor's wife who's a champion of children's rights because she was willing to speak out, stand out, and tell the truth. Seth Dillon, who has brought a lot of laughter to the world like you have, right, with the Babylon Bee. I appreciate the Babylon Bee as someone who also has a spiritual gift of sarcasm. But you remember that tweet that he was basically kicked off of Twitter for, and that led Elon Musk to buy Twitter, which of course has led to all kinds of cultural ramifications. Yeah. He had a choice to pull back to save his audience, and he decided to stand for what's true. And then Ayaan Hirsi Ali, man, what an example of someone who has made the journey from radical Islam to radical atheistic secularism, and now has met Jesus Christ. And it has transformed not only her personal life, but it's transformed her complete understanding of the world. This is what we mean when we talk about truth rising. God's called us to this time and place. And these are remarkable individuals who made very important decisions, some of them in everyday lives. And we're going to face that same decision at some point. We're going to have to make the decision to tell the truth or to back off. We're going to have to make the decision whether we're going to be courageous or not. And this is a film that's calling people to lean into this moment. It is time to embrace this calling to be truth tellers today.
Well, and what is so kind of frustrating for me, frankly, is that when I performed all these years, I would get people, and keep in mind that this is something that I've been fighting about against political correctness is where it first started, because as a comic, I was losing the ability to have access to words and access to topics. And it's like, whoa, 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 that's my, A, it's my livelihood. B, it's my agency and right as a Christ follower to have access to all truth. And C, just the whole idea of the purpose of comedy, I think in a culture. Right. To shine light on darkness in a whimsical way. I'm not necessarily John Lennox whimsical. I don't know how he pulls that off, that the avuncular style. I can't. But I have my own flavor. I have my own DNA as a stand-up comic. So there's a deeper, more aggressive sarcasm and satire. But that's a tool of language to try to make greater points. And everybody you just spoke of that's on the Truth Rising documentary, their story is unique. But what it has in that is compatible is that it's about standing up for a truth statement or idea, and taking consequences or potentially receiving consequences for that. And so people will come up to me, John, they'll go, "Oh man, you're so brave. Thank you for what you do. I thank you for your ministry. Thank you for standing up for truth. Thank you for saying the hard things." And I was doing this during Corona. I wouldn't wear a mask. I wouldn't do it because I believed that they had overstepped the truth boundary. You see, as a Christ follower, I'm supposed to be the best of citizen, but I cannot be a great citizen if I lie. That is the antithesis of God, who is the transcendent truth by which all truth derives. So when they try to come in a secular government and tell me my church is unessential, I don't just open the doors, I rip them off the hinges. There's a reason why we call the room sanctuary. It's the place to go when things are at the worst case scenario. And we must have access to that. Whether you choose to go or not is up to you, but we are here if you need to come in. Well, that's what truth is. Truth doesn't move. It's a sanctuary.
Right.
That you can either choose to engage in or not. Might cost you something. It's supposed to cost you. Truth is supposed to hurt. That's how you know you don't have it. It's called our conscience in the a secular world, and it's called conviction in the Christian world. So what frustrated me, John, was that people would say these, I guess, they're being complimentary. You're brave, you're courageous, you're saying these hard things when nobody else is saying them. You're saying things that no other comic is saying. But my thinking was, I'm glad but if I'm not inspiring you to go do likewise, if you're not taking your sphere of influence, whether it's a factory assembly line or you're a CEO or you're a father or a mom or whatever, a high school student, then shame on you. Enough's enough. Here's what I find troubling. You tell me. I think the problem in American Christianity, and I do differentiate them, is that nobody really must take Jesus very seriously in this church, because otherwise you wouldn't be thinking it was an anomaly and courageous to speak the truth. If this is true, I can't not speak it. That's what I'm here for as a Christ follower. So as much as these stories should inspire us, it shouldn't be the unique hero that stands out amongst us to inspire us. It should be par for the course. It should be expected of all believers. So tell me if you think, and I don't want to just have it attached to the Charlie Kirk assassination, but it's so fresh and it did change things. Something occurred that was such a shift in culture that atheists were saying, I don't know why I need a Bible. I don't know why I'm going to church.
Mhm.
Something shifted. I believe God told me Aslan is on the move. He has decided it's time
Yeah.
to really start weeding out the wheat and the chaff. So tell the church, John, from your perspective, um, if you think that we do need to reimagine what it means to be a Christian in America, it is time to get to be a disciple, or let's just face it, get out. Quit pretending you're one of us, because God
Yeah.
expects all in. Maybe that's too harsh, but I feel like that's my call in my ministry, is to be a prophetic voice to the church, to say it's time to start getting serious. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, look, Bonhoeffer said it well. When Christ calls a man, he bids him to come and die. I mean, those are pretty harsh words, right? And so, you're in good company by saying that sort of thing. And I think there has been an incredible shift, even from the time we started working on this project together. This is a joint project to focus on the family in the Colson Center. And at that time, what we were talking about, for example, were the rise of the nuns. This huge group of spiritually unaffiliated people. We felt like the transgender ideology was kind of an unstoppable train that was going to run over every aspect of culture. And here in the last year, even before the horrific assassination of Charlie Kirk, you started to see these kind of indications that we're in a new moment, right? That some things were being pushed back on. We had whistleblowers on the trans stuff. We had more and more people willing to speak out. Too little, too late. I hope not, because an awful lot of people were victimized, especially young girls like Chloe, because of those lies. But but let's say the truth now, and we had this rise of young people going back to church. Now we're talking about record numbers, both in Europe and here. I just had a conversation on our podcast with a British podcaster named Justin Brierley, who's been kind of documenting this. We have, atheists who, remember back in the 90s, remember all those guys that were telling us that God's a delusion and religion poisons everything. And now they're telling us we need Christianity and to keep civility. And if we don't have Christianity, we don't have the West. And oh, by the way, I like Christmas carols too. I mean, Richard Dawkins said that. Richard Dawkins, of all people. So here we are, like God is working in history. And listen, our hope is not that somehow we get on the right side of history in all the ways that, we've been brainwashed and convinced by those who have threatened Christian ideals over the last 10 years. Is that we're on the right side of Jesus Christ. And it is what Paul told Timothy. If you're going to be on the right side of Jesus Christ, you'll be persecuted.
Yeah.
I mean, he kind of said it definitively like that.
Yeah.
And, I look back at what Francis Schaeffer wrote about, what Chuck Colson talked about, what Del Tackett talked about, what so many of these others said. Listen, if we keep going down this path, this is what will happen.
Yeah.
All their prophecies have come true.
Right.
And I look at that and I say, look, they were right. What they were calling for back then was to understand Christianity as not just being helpful or meaningful, but as true. And if Jesus is the truth, you got to take your stand on that.
Yeah.
And listen, the vision of Truth Rising, to your point, Brad, is What if there were 1,000 more truth tellers tomorrow than there are today? What if there were 1,000 more churches, 100 more churches who were willing to talk about the Christian faith, not just in a kind of a moralistic, therapeutic deism way, which sometimes we do, but to really talk about the fact that it's true, that we're going to be tested, that God has called us to this particular moment, and that's so critical for that testing, and that you're going to have to choose. I mean, listen, I praise God for Chuck Colson, but one of Chuck Colson's biggest message is that everyone is called to be a messenger of truth.
No, that's exactly what I'm saying. You know, you said earlier, like, wow, this is a watershed moment. You know, are we going to lose the West? And you know,
It
we
is.
see that in Europe. We see this issues. But I can say this: Christianity can't die because it's the truth. It cannot be stopped. It will usher in
That's
the
right.
end of everything. But it may stop here. God might say, "I'm done with you guys." When Trump was elected, I told people this isn't a time for celebration. This is a reprieve. This is a window where God said, "This is your last chance, church. You better stand up because you're responsible to say, here's what is moral, here's what is ethical, here's what is virtuous, here's what it means to be married, here's what it means not to get divorced, here's what it means to have gender or a sexual experience that God created in a sacred, holy manner. This is what's necessary." And, you know, we don't teach those things or haven't in American Christianity because we wanted everything safe. And if Christianity is done right, it's very dangerous. Matter of fact, Jesus said part of the definition that you're one of mine, you'll be hated for my sake. It's kind of a way to prove you're one of mine. And so one of the things that I've seen them do is use the left, use words, manipulate, leverage words. Whoever controls the words controls the people, and basically manipulate them to self-censor because they tap into Christian virtues, and then because Christians aren't savvy enough to understand where it's being manipulated, they say, "Well, I don't want to be hateful, so I'm sorry, I won't say that." And it's like, no, 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 it's not hateful to speak truth. That's the greatest form of love. I've never believed in hate speech. I'm a comic. I believe that all speech should be open outside of you trying to extract violence. Let's go kill that guy. No, we're not allowed to do that because you're actually implementing people into doing something that is evil. But I don't believe in hate speech. I believe that there's speech you hate. That I believe. But if I'm a free society and the barometer of free society is free speech, whatever that takes, wherever it comes. The market will weed it out. If we don't like what you're saying, we ain't going to show up to your show. We're not going to watch your program. We're not going to have you work for us. The market will do its job. But I want free speech so I know who I'm dealing with and who my enemy is. So as we unfortunately are getting to the end of our talk, I was hoping to have more time. So who knows? Maybe we can do it another time as well. But I noticed your guys' documentary and I reached out and said, boy, I'd love to help you guys get this in the marketplace. So I guess I'll allow you maybe to summarize where people can watch Truth Rising, what you think they can get from it, and maybe more importantly, or at least equally important, how can a church perhaps decide to use this as some kind of, I don't know, Bible study or to study by which they can begin to change their congregation into warriors for Christ?
Yeah. Well, listen, thank you for having me on. And I feel like we were just getting started too. So let's do it again. I'm up for it if you are. There's lots of themes in Truth Rising that are right along the line of everything we've talked about today. This is a project, again, of Colson Center and Focus on the Family. Both of us have this passion to see Christians rise to this moment. Clearly, God is on the move. Clearly, Aslan is on the move, as you said it. And one of the great lines, and he always is, but it's really obvious right now. And the question is, are we going to be the kind of people he's called us to be? We decided up front to remove all cost barriers on this. We've had some people pay it forward. Truthrising.com is where to go, truthrising.com. You can see the documentary. We've already had almost 150,000 people on YouTube in the first week here see the documentary. That's just on YouTube. It's also been on Christian television. It's been premiered at various Christian colleges. And, that's what we want. We've had watch parties at churches. That's probably the way to get started if you're a church and you want to broach this conversation. Paul says in Acts 17 that God determines the exact times that we live in the boundaries of our dwelling place. So if we're at this critical civilizational moment, it's because God put us here. So we better ask, what does he want from us, And that's what this film is pushing right now. So go to truthrising.com. You can you can see the film. You can share the film. You can sign up there to host a watch party. There's a button there for pastors. You can also then get access to a follow-up study. Because after we talk about the civilizational moment, that we're called to the civilizational moment and tell these stories of Christians who have been courageous in the civilizational moment, the question is, what do we need to know? That's what we see in these stories of courage. That's what we see in the kind of career that you've had, Brad. I'm so grateful for your voice for so long. And I'm all into doing this thing with humor because it's a way to get the truth in the back door. I think G.K. Chesterton said, I'm all for it, man. And so I'm grateful for you. And we just want to be part of that same movement. So go to truthrising.com and you can watch it, share it with others, and watch it together as churches, families, school groups, or whatever.
And also don't leave before you let them know about Breakpoint, because it's a way for them to have a daily devotional kind of experience about Christian worldview. I mean, listen,
Right.
if we're not building disciples, I mean, you know, this documentary is going to come and go, and it's great and it's wonderful, but they need a daily, we all do, a daily discipline. So talk to them quickly about how to get to Breakpoint, how to sign up for
Yeah,
that.
I mean, as you said, I first heard Breakpoint from Chuck Colson like you did. I was getting ready for school one morning and thought, well, this guy sounds different, because he was talking about what was happening in the world from a Christian perspective. And that's really what the Breakpoint's always been about. So it's a daily bite side. You can hear it on Christian Radio. You can find the Breakpoint podcast. We call it a kind of a daily dose of sanity, basically addressing this ever-changing culture through the lens of unchanging truth. You can find it at breakpoint.org or just wherever you download your podcast.
Well, folks, this is John Stonestreet, a much quicker interview than I normally have, but we're trying to be respectful of his time. But nevertheless, what he is telling you is so great. Truth Rising on YouTube, free. Go get Breakpoint so you can begin to defend yourself, be becoming a disciple. But remember, you were never called to be a Christian. You were called to be a disciple. So it's time for us to get busy. It's time for Christian Americans to act like true believers instead of the shallow ones that we have been for so long. Folks, remember, if they ever say you're politically incorrect, I always say thank you for the compliment, because it means you are not censored. You are speaking truth no matter what comes your way. And me, I'm just a comic with my own flavor, but God gave it to me, told me to go to the church and try to drive people to discipleship using humor. I don't know why. It's his call. And I'm just doing what I do, putting the woke back to sleep. See you next Monday.